Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. I literally just ran and tripped and fell trying to get here to say Happy Wine Wednesday. So I hope you're having a good Wednesday. I hope your week has been fabulous. I hope you're doing awesome. A very great crowd with me already tonight. I'll introduce them in a second. If you're on Instagram, don't forget you can listen in. We still haven't figured out the skate here. So if it looks funny, I apologize. You can always listen in. But if you don't, if you want to see the actual video, hop on over to YouTube, search Seahorse Whisperer, and the first thing you'll see is our live stream, and you'll see all of us talking. Tonight I have Ray with me, I have Cheryl with me, I have Holly, and I have Chris Carey. All here to answer your questions and just chat about seahorses, rekeeping, and well, hell, Chris is here. We're going to talk shrimp too, I'm guessing. But anyhow, I am currently sipping on Chardonnay, but it's almost gone. So I'm switching to, if you guys haven't tried this, let me put my hand behind it. If you're into wine and you haven't tried this, I'm not a Cabernet girl, right? But this is amazing. Like, I like Pinot Noirs and, dry reds, but not so dry. I don't usually like Cabernets. This one is amazing. So anyhow, now that I've talked my wine, and my daughter and I are playing with makeup, so I do look a little bit like a mermaid. And Ray mentioned that my nails match the screen. It wasn't on purpose, but I'm okay with it. It's fabulous. All right, moving on to the really important stuff. Miss Holly, what's up with you, first off?
The seahorses are doing fine, other than I had to put little thing to sleep because he wasn't getting better. His infection got worse, and he was a little fighter. Thought that I had to get a double dose of the lethal dose of clove oil because he woke up when after a lethal dose.
Oh no!
And I was following Dan. I found some instruction on Seahorse source, and I have the clove oil. I followed the instructions. I added 1 drop at a time to 2 liters of salt water, and I had an air in there. And he fell asleep right away. Pretty, with the first drop, he started sleeping.
Right.
And so I repeated times, like Dan said to do. And then after I was, he was asleep, I gave a big, fat, full eyedropper full of the clove oil.
Right.
And then waited, like, I think 20 minutes for it to work. And then said, then you'll find the seahorse has passed away. So I took him out of the water, and I was pretty sure he'd passed away. I looked on a paper towel to dry, and then I started going about some other business. Started waking up.
Oh my God!
And
that's my biggest fear.
Well, he wasn't freaking out. He was calm. It was just like he was waking up from sleeping in the morning. I know he's like kind of looking up, like, what's going on, Mom? And I felt that, oh no, you're not gone. I'm sorry. Go back to sleep. I picked up and I put him back in the solution. Gave him another drop. A few minutes. Gave him another drop. Wait a few minutes. Gave him another big dose. Waited long, another big dose. So I gave him.
I was gonna say that's always been a fear of mine, but the thing is, it really is humane. They're just going to sleep.
Yes.
They don't like, it's not painful. They're getting out of the pain of whatever's going on with them, and it feels good. It's like if we were in, like a, I don't know, a trance
like
ourselves,
anesthesia.
And great dream.
I think it's like anesthesia. Yeah, so even when he was waking up, he wasn't waking up and freaking out. Waking up and like, oh. He wasn't like, oh my God, water.
What, Ray?
I put them in the freezer.
Now wait a minute. So okay,
Heard of that
let's make this conversation go quickly because this isn't probably what people want to hear about, but it's
No.
important still. But so if you have a seahorse that's not going to make it, you just literally take it out and put it in the freezer.
Yep.
Wow, and that's
The
humane.
system shut down when they hit the cold there, and then once it shuts down, then it's not long before they pass on.
I don't know if I like that. I'm
It
sorry.
makes sense because Cheryl has talked about this before, like when their water's really cold, like if it gets too cold for them in their water, they go dormant.
Right.
They'll
right.
so go to sleep. So that
It varies by the species, but it's like Northern Erectus. 1 year, I lost my power for over 13 hours due to an ice storm. And my fry tank, they were all about an inch, maybe an inch and a half, got down into the 40s. And all of them were laying motionless on the bottom. Well, the paramedic in me said, gradual rewarming with hypothermia. So I put a heating pad on the bottom of the tank, and they started lifting their heads, and then they'd swim up higher, start to swim up higher in the tank, and they go darting back down to where
they
it was
get
warm.
cold. Yeah.
And I spent 3 days actually bringing that tank back up to 70 degrees because I didn't want to put them into a shock situation. So that's one thing that if you ever get in that situation, don't give up on them until you have, and I mean gradually, very slowly rewarm them, because I don't know if it's the same with seahorses, but like with humans, if you rewarm them too fast when they're profoundly hypothermic, you can send them into a cardiac arrest.
Well, sure, and I mean that's true for
Yeah.
seahorses. Period. You don't want any temperature spikes. Like
Well,
we
and
say,
I
keep the
do
temperature
know,
at this
too.
degrees, but whether you're at this degree or this degree, what you really don't want is spikes one way or the other.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, they take lowering. You can lower temperatures faster than raising them. They take a change to cold better than a change to warmer.
Well, I
Makes
didn't lose
sense.
any of those fry, and I didn't lose any adults with that whole mess. I was probably the one that was freezing to death more than anything else because all my blankets were fixed.
So, so Holly, real quick, what made you decide it was just the time? Because you fought so
Well,
hard for thing 2.
Because he started developing more lesions from the infection. The infection, I could physically see it was getting worse. He was starting to breathe harder, and he went back to where, because he went through a phase when he got better, remember? And I thought he was going to make it.
Yep.
Well, a while later, I could tell he was getting worse, and then he started lying on the floor, and I could just tell by his behavior that he was finally starting to suffer. He was starting to feel it.
Put him back in the
I
tank. He
could
shouldn't be
see
lying
it
on
in
the
his
floor
body.
anyway.
What's that?
What did you say, Ray?
Put him back in the tank. He shouldn't be lying on the floor.
Yeah, good one.
Right, haha. But no, I get
He's
your point,
lying
Holly.
on his floor.
And that's the thing. That was your number one thing, is that if you see improvement, if you see that you're actually helping him, you will continue. But if he starts to suffer or he's not, obviously
I could
getting
tell
worse, you're
he wasn't
done.
going to make it. And even if, and when he woke up from the euthanasia briefly, I had for a brief second in my mind, it's not too late to revive him. Maybe this is a
Yeah.
sign I should revive him. But logic came in and said, well,
Right.
yeah, he's a tough little guy. He might live a lot longer, but he's not going to get better. So he's
He's not
just
going to be
going
happy.
to suffer all that time. And
I absolutely agree.
so
He
I'm
is
like,
literally
go back to sleep.
he's literally using his tail to string harps in heaven right now and very happy. It's all good. Okay, now I'm getting ridiculous. Sorry. It's been a long week, y'all.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I want to say hello to Chris and ask what he's up to. But I wanted to say, because I tend to not do what I tend to not follow through often. I did put links in the past 2 weeks videos. Check them. And Holly,
Mhm.
you knew that it was my daughter's birthday this weekend. They turned
Yes.
15.
Yes.
Twin daughters turning 15. The weekend was shot, right, guys? Okay.
Yeah,
But
that
I
looks
did
fun.
I did get the boxing. I do. This is the K1 up in here. And my question was, I have not had a chance to actually clean the rubble rock. So you're going to have to clean it anyways. My question is, do you want the container? Because as I told you before, the container has a hole in the top that I drilled and little holes in the side because I used it in a sump where the water comes in and goes out the sides and goes through the rubble rock. But if you don't need the container, it would be a sure lot easier for me to ship because there's nothing big enough
I
for me to
don't,
ship it.
yeah, either way, I'd like the container. I don't need it because I could just do the
Okay.
same thing with something. So don't worry about that. But that brought
Well,
me to, you reminded
Good.
me, yeah, earlier, right before we got on, that was one thing I wanted to talk about with all the
Please.
experts who are here, is that I have a lot of old aquarium equipment. I have like pumps, hang on back filters, power heads, things like that from over the years. So I am looking for some best practices, ideas, tips for cleaning and sterilizing old mechanical equipment, like what solution to run through it, how long, how do you do it. So advice is appreciated on that.
Let's let Chris go first. I'm still here, guys. I'm having a coughing fit. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no worries. So, Holly, with your all your old equipment and whatever, it depends on what it's actually made of, like what the properties of the material are. If it's just stuff like plastics, ceramics, silicon, anything like that, I'd probably recommend a chlorine bath or a chlorine sort of dip. It'll sort of loosen up any sort of residual sticky yuckiness on it, but a mechanical clean as well. If you can sort of scrub it or get a toothbrush or a pipe cleaner or something, if it's silicon tubes or whatever, just sort of clean it mechanically as best you can, or just give it a good spray with the hose or under some water pressure, and then a nice soak in the chlorine, and then
specific, mostly like plastic parts and things. Normally, I put them in a bleach bucket or something, basically, like I do other stuff. What I'm really looking for is the mechanical stuff where water runs through it, like a
so stuff like
submersible
pumps.
pump, power heads, mechanical stuff. How do you clean those?
Same way.
Same way,
Would
basically,
you
just try
turn
and
it
get right
on?
in there. If it's the inside of a pump, say where the impeller goes, take out the impeller, get a toothbrush or something really tiny, and just really sort of get it in there on all the different angles, and just sort of scrub all the inner surfaces. Make sure there's no sort of biofilm or anything left. And if you scrub it before you, if you mechanically clean it before you stick it in the bucket of chlorine, then you'll find that it'll come up really good and it'll be sterilized and clean as well.
I have to make one comment real quick.
Mhm.
Please, if you're cleaning your pumps or your power heads or any of that, please don't allow children around you. Send the significant other to his bedroom because I have taken apart pumps and tried to soak them and clean them, and every single time I lose the little teeny black piece that goes on top of the impeller. Okay, I know I sound crazy, but you got an impeller and you've got a stick that goes through it. I'm not scientific. It's a damn stick, okay?
Mhm.
And then you have black parts that go on the top and the bottom, and they fit into the both sides of the pump or the
Yeah.
impeller or whatever.
Volunteers.
Every time I lose one. Anybody else have this problem? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I will probably have Scott help me out and
Shut up,
supervise,
Cheryl.
because he takes apart. He, for years, has gotten pumps like for our ponds and things. Like if something stops running, he takes it apart and cleans it and reassembles, and it magically works. And I have never taken apart a pump, but I've seen him and I've seen the million pieces and things and
You got to keep track. And wait, Cheryl, I'm really curious.
so
First of all,
you
I was
can't
kidding.
just stick the thing in the bleach bucket and plug it in then. You really have to take the whole thing apart.
I mean, you could, but if like say if you've got a pump and it's going to point straight up, it's going to just shoot water all over you or bleach all over you and all over everything. So if you've got a silicon hose or something on it or something that you can sort of redirect back into the bucket, then you can turn it on and it'll recycle the bleach, and then you're bleaching all the way up through the pipes and everything, and that's pretty good. But just make sure you're not going to wear it yourself or get any in your eye or anywhere where it would be unsafe for you, or just make sure you're looking after yourself.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking
wait,
with
wait,
the hang-on
wait,
back, I could do that.
hang on. Cheryl, I'm going to go to you very next and apologize for telling you to shut up. So I'm going to go to you next, but I want to say, you see this? Yeah. So every single time I clean a pump or power head, on that little stick that goes through the impeller, there's hair wrapped around. And I am careful. I pull my hair back when I do my take. It doesn't matter. There's always hair. And if you think about it, if you just stick the pump in or stick the power head in and you just run it in bleach water, it's not going to get rid of that. So that's why I pull them apart, is this. But Cheryl, I was kidding about saying shut up. It's just because you're awesome and you always know everything, and I hate that. But I love you. So what's your thoughts? Go ahead.
It depends. If you've got a lot of stuff or something, the bleach is not going to take care of it. You're going to need to use some form of an acidic chemical. The 5% vinegar that we can sometimes afford in this country, they just raised it from less than $5 a gallon to over almost $14 a gallon at the grocery store.
Yeah.
That will break down the salt creep that's on there. If you really want to.
Yeah.
So wait, Cheryl,
but I don't think mine's strong enough. So look for 5% is good for that kind of thing.
Let's really quickly.
It's just 5% extra strength, 5% white vinegar.
And Cheryl, can you tell us
the
the difference?
If that doesn't work fast enough, you can use muriatic acid or hydrochloric acid.
Right, but most people don't even know how to get that. So, I mean, that's a good point, Ray, for sure. But Cheryl, can you, or Ray, or Chris, whoever, can you tell us the difference in when you would use bleach, when you would use peroxide, and when you would use hydrochloric acid?
Okay, I use bleach like if I'm trying to clean up rock that I'm planning on moving to another tank, or non-functioning parts, if my K1 media reactors, things like that. I can use bleach. But if I'm trying to remove salt creep from a pump, the pump is starting to hang up, something like that, I'll run it through vinegar. And then in each of these, you have to be very cognizant of thoroughly rinsing them, and also using a dechlorinator on your equipment that you've had in bleach.
Right.
And don't be mean. Don't take everything outside, put it outside, get everything hooked up and running to the power just in time for the rain to hit. Not a good idea.
Right. Sorry.
Will remove like hard water stains and that kind of thing. So that makes sense. It's just two different things.
Yes. It's like my nursery tubs, when I clean those, I'm going to be cleaning them with vinegar because they're going to have salt creep around the edges, and bleach is not going to get that off. And even using 5% hydrogen peroxide, it still takes some work.
There's not much I use peroxide for on equipment. I save that for basic livestock feed, and I guess I've never really treated a seahorse with, seahorse fry I've done.
Right.
But other than that, I've got enough other uses for peroxide. I don't need to use it on equipment when bleach is a hell of a lot cheaper.
Right.
Well, yeah. One of the things that I run into, the biggest thing that I treat most often with hydrogen peroxide are my artificial hitches. because that's what the company says to use, because bleach can actually damage them.
Right.
And you need to use either Dawn detergent or H2O2.
And after you,
That's
but
weird
after
because-
you, go ahead, Ray.
That's kind of weird because I've got all sorts of artificial hitches, and for even ones that I had before the Seahorses. So some of them I've been doing for 20 years, but all of them I've had for at least 15 years. And I just, when I'm cleaning the tank, I pull out one set, put the clean set in, throw them in the bleach, and leave them till I clean the next one. And
So you have a double set.
Yeah, I've done that too. But
I
it
try
depends
to do that too.
it depends on the manufacturer of this hitch and what the actual hitch is made from.
Cheryl has those gorgeous orange, beautiful, actual like sculptures. Go ahead, Cheryl.
The more
The
recent ones,
newer ones do
require-
fade. Yeah, I found that too. Like Ray says, my older hitches, things that I've had, because I've had aquariums for a long time. I didn't necessarily have them for the seahorses back then. I saved them and I'm using them now. And the old ones handle cleaning a lot better than new ones. Some of them will fade in the bleach bucket.
yeah.
Mm.
And
Well, the
I'm
thing
not
is,
using super strong bleach. I do like Dan says, I put 1 cup of bleach for 5 gallons of water. So it's not like huge
Right.
amount of bleach.
well, I just follow what the company tells me how to clean. Like the new stuff that I've got, they're too darn expensive anymore.
Yep.
And they say either use Dawn detergent or
Mhm.
hydrogen, a 3% hydrogen peroxide solution. And then
I painted all mine. There was stuff that I bought either before Seahorses or after, and then I wanted them the oranges and the yellows and that, so
So
I
you
used
painted
plastic
them.
coat and painted them all.
Wait, which paint could you use that you put back into salt water?
Mhm.
Plastic coat.
Really?
Plastico? I'm going to write that
Plastic.
down because
Yeah.
I was wondering that what use for them.
It's hard to find here in Canada.
I
Well, so-
haven't heard of it, so I'm wondering if I can find
Jim.
it here.
yeah,
Hey,
I
Jim.
don't know, because I've got some old hitches that were made in the UK. Believe it or not, they're not even in business anymore, and haven't been for years. Some of mine go back to when Red Sea was still making artificial hitches, which they haven't done in years. And they're more of a plastic type of hitch as opposed to very soft, flexible ones that like you can get from what is it?
Ocean
Aqua-
Aquaria.
Ocean
All
Aqua-
the places, right?
Yeah.
So
The
that there's
flexible ones
differences.
are more
material.
problematic to paint them, because if you do make them flex a lot, in time the paint will start flaking off. But if you've got the rigid ones, and if you clean them properly before you paint them, then it lasts a long time.
But and Cheryl, so you could you spoke to what you prefer, but you could put them in bleach. They might fade, or peroxide.
No. Well, it depends on the hitch. Some of the old ones, I used to bleach all the time. And it's only been more recently with the new hitches where they say you don't use bleach.
Bleach, right? Okay.
And some of the ones I'm buying are so cheap, they don't tell you anything.
Right.
So you have to kind of figure it out. But I've put my my Ocean Aquaria ones in the bleach bucket a few times, and I haven't really had any issues, but no, not to put them in the bleach bucket.
Well, they have
Those
very
things
clear
are really
washing
new,
instructions.
so they might develop a problem. And the thing is, those ones are really expensive.
Yeah.
They are, like Ray said, they're soft and flexible. So, I mean, but they come in like a million colors, but they're expensive. So I have a few of those, but mostly I like to find stuff, either online or the aquarium stores. And a lot of this stuff that I find is like off brands, and they're not super
Right.
expensive. So you
But
just
they don't
kind
give you any information.
Yeah.
Figure
You
it
also
out. To figure it
Well,
out.
and this, I do want to mention, guys, that Dan and I have not forgotten. We're going to do part 3 of Ask Seahorse Source, where we're going to cover bleach, peroxide, probiotics, fry, all that crap, not crap, all that stuff. But just in the meantime, it's a really interesting topic because I don't know the correct answer. Cheryl and Ray and Chris would be better at answering it. But for me, if I have something I'm not sure of, then I use peroxide and I just use my hands and I scrub. Like if I pull apart a pump and or peroxide or vinegar, and if I pull apart a pump and I've got the hair out and I'm scrubbing everything, then I'm good. As far as like fake plants that are rigid, I use bleach. But Cheryl, how do you determine, or Ray, or Chris, how do you determine which to use when? I mean, I know we're talking about it, but I just still don't grasp it.
well,
Like you're talking about soft or hard or what?
some of mine are so old; they've been bleached so many times because back then I didn't have anybody telling me not to use bleach on them, and they're still fine. But by the same token, the newer ones specifically say do not use bleach.
So just read the instructions. Okay.
Yeah, but basically,
And
Yeah.
if Holly and I get off Amazon and they don't
Just
have
figure it out.
instructions, be careful.
Then you're experimenting.
I don't have anything that's new. The Seahorses
That's the
are
way
the
to do it
newest
if
thing
you
that I
can.
have. Well, hell, like I said, my power head, but I've had most of them since the mid-90s.
you have to
So
understand.
wait. Ray, did you answer? If you did, I apologize. I'm trying to do 15 things at once. But do you prefer to use vinegar, peroxide, bleach? How do you clean stuff? I think you said, but say it again.
I use bleach, but I usually clean things first, mainly because there's often a calcium buildup. That will depend on what your calcium levels are in your tanks. But if there is a calcium buildup at all, especially where the impellers are turning in their pocket,
Hair.
I put them in the vinegar, or actually, I prefer to use the more dangerous route with the hydrochloric acid because it's much faster. And I'm a very impatient person. You better know how to use hydrochloric acid before you do any of that because it is very dangerous.
Okay, so real quick, Ray. What do you use? Like gloves, face protection? What do you use when you use hydrochloric acid?
Well, my hands aren't very delicate.
He says,
what would you
I
suggest?
say not as I do.
Right. What would you suggest if someone was to venture into there?
I guess maybe you can buy gloves. I don't know.
But do you face protect? I mean, what
For me,
what are the dangers? Because I mean, we deal with formalin with fry, and it can cause cancer. So I mean, there's some things that people are like, whatever. But this sounds like something you really need to be careful about.
Yeah, I guess I'm probably not the right person to ask on that.
Okay, never mind.
I
I'll
know
say
what
it
from when I
cleaning
worked in the lab.
tanks with
Okay, wait, time
bleach.
out. Cheryl first.
Yeah, a couple things to be aware of. One, if you mix hydrogen peroxide and add bleach to it,
Oh boy.
Don't
Forget it.
Don't do that. One at a time.
You have to be really careful when you're using chemicals and mixing chemicals. I actually, when I was taking an organic chemistry lab, I actually misread the directions and melted the marble tabletop that I was working on.
Oops.
They evacuated the building,
Oh,
turned
geez.
on all the vent hoods. Fire department showed up, and I made the department solve it for the first time in years.
So even if you're experimenting, choose one. Don't choose all. But Holly, go ahead.
I'll say I'm cleaning. I clean my my hospital and my little 10-gallon tanks. I clean them in the bathtub with bleach solution, and I put on gloves and goggles because I splash
Bath in the same tub.
and wear old clothes.
Yeah, we have a question about what about citric acid for cleaning? I've never used citric acid, so I'm not able to answer that.
I have it,
I've
but I
heard
never
of that.
thought of using it for cleaning equipment.
Chimp,
I have
if you don't
citric
want
acid, but I have it in powder form.
So Chimp, if you're in the comments, or if you want to jump in, feel free. I can give you a link. But if you don't, in the comments, let us know. Have you experienced using citric acid? Because I'm guessing you have. And Chimp is an excellent reefer who might be giving us some tips here. So let us know how you use it, what form, if it has to be a certain form. Because I know we use I can never say that word either. Fenbendazole.
Yeah.
I can't ever say it.
Fenofibrazole?
Fenbendazole. Cheryl, help me.
We're talking about Panicure.
Yes, Panicure. There you go. That's the easier way to
It's
say it.
fenofibrazole, right?
It's Fenben something. But my point being,
Fenofibrazole, I believe.
no, it's Fenbendazole or something like that. Anyways, there may be different forms. Anyhow, Panicure, Dan has told us repeatedly, don't get a certain form, get the other form because it works differently. So, and I actually did that the first time I tried to use it. I got the wrong form and had a big mess and it didn't work. So, what form do you use, Chimp? And what do you use it for and how does it work?
It's more
And Mr.
expensive
Chris,
than vinegar.
go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, it's more expensive than vinegar, whether you buy it in a liquid form or in a powder form. But for
Right.
me, I have powder form because of what I use it for. I use it
And
for other
Chris,
things not related to the aquatics at all.
right. I can't wait for us to have the Ask Seahorse Source Part 3 because I plan to ask Dan to share all the ways he uses peroxide. It's going to amaze you. Air conditioners, everything. He uses peroxide everywhere. Oh, I can't wait. But
Okay.
Chris, I think you're still there. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, I know you have a lot more artificial plants and et cetera to clean. What's your method?
Yeah, so our method is basically chlorine for the most part. If there's specific instances where I have excessive amounts of salt buildup, or if I have specifically pests such as Spirorbis worms, where the Spirorbis worms look like a tiny little white spiral-shaped shell. They're almost like tiny little barnacles that grow on the surfaces of tanks, or they get in all sorts of spots.
Mm-hmm.
If I had one of those, if I had some of those on the inside of a pump that I was trying to clean, or even the inside of a tank, I have used vinegar to soften them up, or even totally dissolve them over time. But they're very sort of hard to mechanically sort of scrub off. So I've used vinegar in the past to soften them up, but any sort of acid would soften them up and dissolve the calcium. But yeah, for the most part, with all of our artificial decorations and whatnot, usually I go through a process where I mechanically clean them, make sure that I've scrubbed anything that is mechanically dirty on them, off them, and then I'll give them a good hose down, sort of make sure that there's sort of high pressure water hitting them, gets rid of any sort of dirt or any other sort of yuck that you don't really want on there, and then basically give it a nice sort of chlorine bleach sort of dip for a few hours, and then sort of it gets transferred at the end of the day into our rinse tank, where it'll sort of sit overnight to get rid of all the residual chlorine, and then gets sort of dried out or gets reused.
So I want to say really quickly, Francis, I saw your update on the seahorses, and we're going to talk about that in a second because it's very important. But I'm curious from all of Holly, Cheryl, Ray, and Chris, what happens if you're cleaning things like rock, where bacteria matters?
Okay, I bleach live rock first of all.
Same here.
What if you need it for the tank? You still pull it out and bleach it? You're talking about redoing a tank.
Anything that goes in my tank, it's not going to be live until it's been in my rock tank for a while to make it live. And I know there's nothing in there because I bleached the rock before it ever went in there.
Right. No. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to be clear. Like I'm speaking personally because I had to do this last week, and I'll tell you what I did. But basically, my rock's covered with this nuisance algae. It's not doing what it needs to do. I needed to clean it, but I didn't want to use any chemicals, or at least not use, or at least not pull all the rock and clean it because I needed it in the tank. So if you're a person that doesn't have live rock on, or I'm sorry, dry rock on the side, cycled rock on the side. If you have one tank with rock in it and you're having problems and you want to clean it, what do you do then?
I take
Lower
out
the
one,
nutrients.
put it in a bucket of salt water, and take a brush to it and remove the nuisance algae.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, if you do that a couple of times along with water changes, it doesn't come back. You can get rid of it.
And raise point?
Lower the nutrients.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Agreed. And that's what I did. Okay. Back to the point. Holly, did you have any other questions about that?
Well, I've used quick peroxide bath dips for live rock too, which I found out about online to remove algae, and that
Okay.
works.
One of the things I found is because I've been doing my little stands for a lot of my hitches, and this was all rock that I had bleached, dechlorinated, set out to dry. And to clean them up after I drilled the holes and stuff, I put them into some hydrogen peroxide solution. You'd be amazed how much stuff came off of those rocks after they were put through hydrogen peroxide.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something else to keep in mind.
Yes, and we'll have a very deep hydrogen peroxide conversation on the next Ask Seahorse. Just an update. Francis says all 4 of the seahorses he's working with are doing wonderfully. Haven't seen any symptoms coming back thanks to Dr. Cheryl and the vets that he's working with. Hoping the tiger tails beat it, and the hystrix have pretty much transitioned to the thawed mysis. Isn't that awesome?
That is what
It's
you
really
want.
awesome.
We love success stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Depending on the age of the seahorse and the species, trying to convert wild caughts to frozen can be a real challenge.
It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now on to me, because it's all about me. I'm just kidding, guys. But why in the hell will my seahorses not breed? Chris, why won't they breed?
You're just not playing the right background music for them.
You need some very
So they don't like Metallica? Oh, shit. Okay. Anyways,
No, you're gonna have to get onto some harder stuff.
Frank Sinatra.
How big are they and how old are they?
Oh, gosh. Cheryl, you
They're
know
old
I suck
enough.
at this. Yeah, they're old enough. They were old enough when I got them. They've
I
been
found sometimes
dancing.
moving them to a different tank works.
Really?
Yeah.
Ray, what about changing the scenery? Because
Changing what?
the scenery,
The scenery.
what's around
scenery.
them. Because you
that
well,
didn't
wait,
work for my barbs.
Well, wait. I want to hear your answer. But you said change the tank. But the thing is, I think I screwed up. I was aiming to prove that an all-in-one tank could hold seahorses. They would breed. Blah blah blah. The tank is holding seahorses, 3 of them. They're doing great. Everything's fine. But it's dull. It's just rock and some shower curtains. Thank you, Heather, because they love the shower curtains. But there's no color. I do have a blue underneath. But there's just not much for them to be interested in. So I wonder if I put some cool, colorful things in there, if that might matter or no.
When
Or
I
change the
changed
flow.
decor in any of the tanks, whenever that happened to me, and it happened with a set of redye that I had, and it also happened with Angustus and with barbs. And I wasn't successful until I changed the tanks. Now, the abs that I have that I got from Australia, the only production I had out of them was right after I got them. A male gave birth, and there were scads of them there, but they were all premature. And then the male died a couple weeks after that.
Oh,
And I've never had any abs produce eggs or produce fry after that. but I don't have another 90-gallon tank to move them into it at that time,
Right.
so I couldn't change tanks. I did change decor on that tank, and it never made any difference.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't
Chris,
think
what's your
it's
thoughts?
that much of a-
Yeah, so I mean, for Ray's situation, tank space, especially vertical space, is very important for the abdominalis. They require a lot of space for their very over-the-top dancing. But Kelly, for your situation, you said you've got 3 seahorses. Are they males, females? What's the ratio?
2 females, 1 male.
Poor bloke. No, so
Are they hounding him? But they're not, because Aphrodite is very, she wants nothing to do with it. She's like, you guys stay over there. I'm over here. I'm good. I'm eating. I'm good. Whereas the 2 that I got from Ocean Rider that were yellow, they're now the color of the rock. Another reason why I want to put colorful things in the tank, because I want them to color back up. If you look at them in the light, you can still see their pigment of yellow. But looking straight on, they look gray, like the rock, or grayish white. Anyhow,
how long's it been?
how long have I had them? Cheryl, how long have I had them?
almost
Anybody
at least
remember?
close to a year.
It's not a year.
No, it's more like about 7 months.
Yes, I was going to say 7
Okay.
months.
I'm thinking
But
somebody
I
else.
got them. They were good size when I got them, and they started dancing right away. I see them do the courting. I see them doing the spinning. So anybody out there that has seahorses that aren't breeding, please know you're not alone. I'm right here with you. I've bred
Mine are
seahorses
the
for years,
same
and mine are
way.
not doing it. But
And
these
one
are
of
new
mine
seahorses.
has bred before, but her original mate passed away, about a year ago, and she's trying with her son.
Yeah,
and
that's weird.
and they're getting closer, though. I mean, I think for them it's kind of a matter of lining up right and figuring out what they're doing. But she's been doing something interesting I've noticed, is that he's been getting better to where he's lining up right, but at the last minute she changes her mind and swims away.
Right.
She's not
Like
ready yet.
they'll be dancing, and it looks to me like, okay, now you guys should do the egg transfer. And then all of a sudden she's like, nope, and leaves.
Well, no, I totally agree. And everybody argues this. Let me tell you, for the record, I'm going to set the record straight. The females are in charge. Okay. Yes, in the human world, but also in the seahorse world. All right. They do the nod. They make the eggs. If they don't have the eggs, the male doesn't get them. And I know all you males hate me now. But point being,
Have you ever seen her?
I know I'm right. Wait. I know I'm right, but I'm just saying my female that I haven't named, but not Aphrodite, gets huge. She gets so fat. I know she has eggs. This is what makes me freaking crazy. She gets so huge, like looks like she has GBD, like gas bubble or internal GBD. She looks bloated, crazy. And then the next day, I'll see him dancing and all this stuff. And then nothing, no babies, no pregnancy, no eggs anywhere. I don't know what's going on.
I never
It's
find
driving me
eggs
nuts.
either.
I know, but I'm in an all-in-one. I don't have a sump
I
with a bunch of
find
crap.
eggs in my grow out tank where they're Aphrodite's age. But one thing I've figured out watching them is they don't know what they're doing. They're trying to do everything on the ground. They're not dancing. They're not going up in the water column.
Yeah, but my guys are. My guys, my guy and girl, not guys. They're dancing. They're going all the way up. And I almost wonder, Chris, you mentioned the height of the tank for an abdominalis. And here's my question. And I want to say, Colby, I see your question. We're going to talk about it in a second. We ramble a lot, but I will make sure we cover what you're saying in the comments. So please stick around. But I was going to say, my guys do dance up, and they seem to hit the top before they've connected. And I do have a very short tank. And the advice used to be you need a tall tank if you want to breed seahorses. We went away from that because so many people were able to breed seahorses with a shorter tank. But Chris, I know you haven't dealt with erectus, but Chris and Cheryl and Ray, do you think maybe the height thing does matter after all?
I think you really need at least 20-inch high tank for erectus because they can get quite large. For things
Mhm.
like engines, pot bellies, some of the really big seahorses, you need something that's much larger because I can guarantee you when they start hitting that 10 to 12-inch length, they will dwarf a 20-inch total tank.
Right. But hang on, Cheryl, just to expand upon that, they're still not 12 inches. They're probably 6 inches, but I'm saying they still have plenty of room. And from the day I got them, they were cording and spinning. And when they hit the top, you can tell they're like, I need more room. Like me in this
Yeah.
thing. I'm like, I want more. So we've discussed that they should figure it out because so many erectus do court, have fry in shorter tanks, but maybe we're
Yeah,
wrong.
Yeah,
Maybe they
because
do need
mine
height.
did had fry
One
in
moment.
that tank. It's just the seahorses that are there now are not.
Yeah. Have you
The
ever
only
seen
missing
female?
is Sand,
Have
the
you ever
male
seen your
that had.
female extend her ovipositor?
Wait. Sorry, Cheryl, go ahead.
Have you ever seen your female extend her ovipositor?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
he's extending, he's inflating. They get to the top, and then part company.
Well, they get to the top and it's like, oh, that messed us up. And then they go back down.
How tall is your tank? Just curious.
It's maybe 18 inches. Or yeah,
Still
inches.
should work.
I'm just curious. Maybe I may, and the other thing, Chris, because I know you've worked a lot with trying to breed color into seahorses and breed specific traits into seahorses, and you have taught me and the rest of us that I don't know how to say it correctly, that a few generations in is not bad. They'll still breed, they're still good, everything's good. But do you think that maybe if I got fifth generation brother and sister or something, maybe that's causing it? Like Holly is dealing with mom and brother and whatever? No?
No, I don't think so. Like, I think if you even had like a second male in the mix, maybe that could perhaps help. Like, you might have a male who's just not interested.
Well, he's interested. I think the girls aren't interested,
The
but go ahead. Sorry.
females are.
I'm sorry.
It could be that too, but if you had two males for the females to choose from, maybe that would spark something. Like maybe it's just your females aren't interested in the male that you've got there presently,
Particular male.
and
Go ahead.
it could just be a time thing as well. Maybe they're just not sort of ready yet. Maybe it might be another 2 or 3 months or another 6 months or whatever before they finally do it for you. I think just because they haven't bred successfully for you yet doesn't mean that they won't in your current setup.
Well,
I know it's frustrating.
Too.
They're
I'll say
about,
my
wait.
male is 42
They're about to
female.
be grounded. They're about to be grounded. I'm going to separate them with crates. No more hanky panky if you don't give me babies. But point being, I like that suggestion, Chris. I need a new male. Wink. Anyways, go ahead, Holly. Go ahead.
So I have in that tank, I have 2 males and 2 females, but one of the males, and I've talked about him before, he has mobility issues, so he can't do the dance and stuff. So I have one male courting 2 females, basically. But the younger female, she doesn't really know what she's doing, it seems, whereas Candy does. So there's a big difference between the two of them.
Well, no,
So
and I get what you guys are saying.
Really curious, but the egg transfer doesn't seem to happen. Or I think, like I've said before, I think he was pregnant once and miscarried.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But it's not. He didn't get pregnant again. So I think there's something about they're not lining up right. She's leaving at the last minute, when this should be happening. And then she's just like, nope. And then it's like a tease. She'll swim to the other side of the tank and do her thing and then she'll come back,
Right. No,
and
no, I
go
totally hear
again.
you.
It's
I
not
totally hear
happening.
you.
The end.
And I'm not used to this frustration because all the seahorses I've ever had before, not the exotic species, not my Barbori, not my Reedi, but my Erectus, man, I had babies within a couple months of getting Erectus, period. And then when I got more Erectus, they were having babies, and it was just constant. With these guys, they are lining up properly. They are doing the dance. They're spinning. They're turning white. They're courting. The males poofing and then blowing out, all the stuff, but no babies.
Mhm.
It's driving me nuts.
Mhm.
But I think I'm going to take
Mhm.
Chris's advice and get another male. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Last time I saw that happen was a pair that I put together that I raised myself.
Maybe they don't want to be together.
Okay, and they spent several months. They were still young. They were at a 90 gallon. They spent several months courting. I mean, I'm talking day-long courtship displays for hours.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I got up one morning and I freaked out because they were on opposite ends of the tank. The
Mm-mm.
little female now had this little bitty tiny flap of skin. Yeah, she was developing a he pouch.
Well, don't say that to me. And no, that's not what my seahorses are way too old for that. I know they're
No, I'm
over a year.
serious. This went on for months, and I knew how old they were. And I specifically put a young female in with a larger male.
And she didn't like him, so she became a boy. I get it. Stop jinxing me, Cheryl. Stop jinxing me. But no, I mean, seriously, I really do think Chris's point was good and valid because I think that the females in the tank don't like the male. I think he's like not, he doesn't have the six pack or something. I don't know. Or how many packs do they have as a seahorse? I don't know. But I think they don't like him because I do notice both females like hide from him. It's not like I usually see with seahorses. I know in my older
Yeah.
tanks, the females are always annoyed by the males. That's how I always feel. Maybe it's because I'm a woman. I don't know. But I always feel like the females are annoyed by the males, but they still are like, okay, come on, let's dance. Here's your eggs, right? This time she'll dance with him, but there's just no eggs. Anyways, Ray, have any thoughts on this?
Oh, sorry, you caught me. I'm sitting here typing and
I was
thoughts on
asking you about sex, Ray. What do you think about sex in seahorses?
Seahorse.
All right,
about
I'm
it
gonna
even
stop
at
being
79.
okay. All right, let's move on. Okay. So let's move forward because if they ever do have fry, you'll be the first to know, folks. And we'll share continually. And if I get a new male, as Chris suggested, I'll let you know if it works. Muhammad wants to know, is a 20-gallon long too big for dwarf seahorses?
Depends on the filtration and how many he wants.
Yeah, not if you have a million of them.
Right, and Mohammed, I know you're getting answers in the comment section, but I like to bring it into the videos so people who watch later can read or hear, not read, hear. But my point being, it's a great question. It's just their answers actually make sense because we talk about this all the time. It's so hard to give a generic answer. It's like saying, can I keep 3 seahorses in a 30-gallon? Well, it depends on the species. It depends on if you have a sump. It depends on your filtration. What are you doing? Just your whole setup. So we're not trying to put you off for your question. And I know you're getting answers in the comments, but please come in and share it live, guys, because that's what people need to hear and know is that, I think we do the best Wine Wednesdays when we have an actual back and forth between two people. Like somebody saying, is a 20-gallon too long? Well, what do you have besides the 20-gallon? What's your filtration? Oh, well, I have this, that, and that. So yeah, I just rambled.
I have a friend that years ago decided to do a monumental dwarf tank. She set up a 40-gallon breeder with a sump. She laced it with live copepods, amphipods, and mysid shrimp. She grew out the tank and everything. And then she added a I don't even remember now how many dwarf seahorses. The primary difference that we saw in what she did versus what most people were seeing is most people get 7, 8 dwarfs out of a male, maybe 10 or 11. Her males were larger, and they were producing broods sometimes as high as 18 fry, almost doubling what was normal. Yeah, it made a huge difference. But I mean, this was also somebody that had been in the hobby for many, many years and had
Right.
raised a number of different species. And it was an experiment she wanted to try, and she did make her point with it.
Yep. And I was going to say too that we actually did a video on keeping dwarf seahorses, which I will link again. It's linked last week and I think the week before, but I'll link it again. But I want to make sure that Colby's questions are covered. Again, I know you're getting answers in the comments, but I want to make sure we're live talking about it. So Colby said, "Thank the Lord you're live. I have a bit of an issue. I went to a new reef store earlier this week and basically rescued these poor seahorses that were wild caught. They were so skinny, and I'm trying to get them to eat, but they just won't budge. I truly have done everything I can think of." So my first question, Colby, is: are you talking about dwarf seahorses, or are we talking about
What
erectus or
species
something
are we
like that?
talking about?
What species? Because dwarf seahorses will never eat frozen mysis, in my opinion. I know some people have gotten them to, but it's very difficult. And if it's erectus or some other species, we can definitely help you. So please let us know in the comments. And Chris asked that question right away. What species? And Chris, I'm playing backtrack. What have we talked about since then?
It doesn't really seem like he knows exactly what species they are, but he said that they've probably come from the, like, they're probably wild caughts and they've probably come from Florida. So they're probably either erectus or Redi.
Probably erectus, I would think, from that area.
Colby, go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, the thing is, first of all, they're not going to recognize brine shrimp, adult brine shrimp, as food. I've run into that with wild caughts on more than one occasion, where they simply ignore them no matter what you try. I see them picking occasionally. What I would do, and what I've done in the past when I've gotten some really skinny wild caught seahorses, and I'm going back a lot of years, was I introduced live amphipods and mysis shrimp to start conditioning them to bring them back to health. Put them through a deworming protocol to help improve what they were going through. And then gradually started introducing frozen food in conjunction with the live, to the point that it's a little hard to tell the difference between a frozen mysis that's flying around the tank and a live mysis shrimp that's flying around the tank. So I increased their flow every time I fed them to give them movement in the prey. And I actually kept that pair alive. They were large adults when I got them. This is a pair of combs. And I actually kept them with me for over 8 years. And the male was so emaciated when I got him, I didn't think he had a chance at all of living. But I got him through. I literally spent $300 on mysis shrimp just to get him through the deworming protocol.
Right, and that's one key thing that I would say. The comment said, "I've had them for a week, so they must be eating something, or they'd probably be dead." We never recommend not feeding seahorses 3 to 4 times a day for sure. But Holly and I have both experienced they can live without food.
They take a long time to starve to death, like a month or more. So
yep, and go ahead, Holly.
Lucy Arowana does a great job of
wait, guys, hang on. Holly first. Go ahead.
I was just saying, so you have time to train them for eat. They're not going to starve right away. But I'm thinking, what if they have parasites? I mean, would you guys treat for parasites first, feed first, then treat for parasites? Because I've never kept wild caught. So what's your protocol?
Okay, so wait, Cheryl, I'm going to let you answer because you're the expert. And I will say there's files on this on Seahorse Sources group and Facebook. in the group in Facebook. But I would say the one thing you can watch if your seahorses aren't eating for a week or more, that's not what you want for sure. But if that's happening for whatever reason, you watch if their sides start caving in. When Cheryl says emaciated, that means that you can see that their stomach's caved in and they look unhealthy. I don't know how else to describe it. But Cheryl, you're going to tell them how. Go ahead.
Well, Lucy Arowana did some wonderful work in terms of converting her wild caught erectus to frozen. And what she did is she gradually put she started feeding live brine shrimp. They did actually take that, which was a good thing. And then she started putting live brine shrimp mixed with frozen brine shrimp in a net. And she taught them to feed out of the net. And because the live were not moving very fast and she was wiggling the net, they couldn't tell the difference. And she was ultimately able to convert them. It took a little time and it definitely took some effort, but she was able to pull it off.
Yep, agreed.
And I was lucky with my combs. I think they were so starving, they were willing to eat darn near anything except brine shrimp.
Yes, but like with my Barbori, they were so damn stubborn, and they weren't even wild caught. They were captive bred. They would not eat stuff unless it was given to them in the right fashion. So what I would say is, first of all, Mohammed, if you could send me a picture or a video of the seahorses, I can put it up so we can all see the species. We're pretty good at guessing or identifying. I shouldn't say guessing. Identifying species. And that could help because some species are just pickier than others. If they are like erectus, we can help, just different species. Like Chris, any thoughts?
Yeah. So like I said in my comment to him, so Colby, make sure you're very consistent with your approach to feeding. So if you are going up to a certain corner of the tank and feeding out food, keep doing that. I'm assuming you're feeding them frozen mysids, but you haven't really said what you're feeding. So keep feeding out whatever you're feeding. Keep trying to do it in the same way.
Same time of day too, right?
Yeah, you're trying to train them onto the food, and being consistent is very much a big part of that. Now, sometimes you'll have people who keep trying to cater to the seahorses and keep trying to basically shove the food in their face or keep trying to, put it right under their snout or whatever. My approach has always been, running a massive facility and not having the time to cater to each and every little seahorse. Basically, to try and dose out the food in the general direction of the seahorses and basically leave them to do their thing. Now, with wild-caught seahorses, they can be a pain in the butt to train on to feeding frozen and dead foods that they're sort of not used to. But if you keep consistently trying to tackle it in the same way, and you're consistently feeding in the same way, eventually they'll pick it up. Eventually they will learn, and just keep being consistent, and just make sure that you're maybe coming past and siphoning up any uneaten food, if it's not live food, several hours afterwards, so that your water parameters, your water quality is not going to dip too much. So just keep make sure the water quality is nice and high, and just stay consistent with your feeding. That would be my biggest tips for
Chris,
training.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Chris, do you think that Cheryl's method, and I think Dan's even method, is correct? Like if you have wild caught, as you're deworming them and dealing with all of the things that you have to deal with wild caught, go ahead and give them live foods and then train them? Or
yeah, I mean, if you've got access to live food, definitely. But I'm in a situation where bringing live foods into the mix isn't really sort of viable. It's not sort of it sort of brings other problems into the mix, and
sure.
You're trying to wean them onto a live food, then trying to wean them onto a frozen food after that will be just another step in the mix. And I've found through trial and error that I can readily train pretty much any seahorse onto frozen food by just sticking with that that consistent method. I haven't found a seahorse that I can't train. I have found that sea dragons are harder again, and I have found that I cannot train wild sea dragons consistently using that method, which is why it's a good thing that Steve McLeod is doing the thing that he's doing and sort of training them onto frozen food before he sort of sells the ones that he raises.
It seems to
Absolutely.
depend on the
Go ahead, Jill.
individuals and some on the species, depending on how willing they are to take frozen food.
Right. And
I see from Colby's comments, they're snicking at the food inside of the turkey baster. So it looks to, they are realizing it's food, and perhaps they're getting discouraged when they run into the turkey baster.
well, what that
So
tells me, go ahead, Holly.
they
finish.
see the food. Yeah, they see the food, so they know it's food. They're trying to get it, but when they hit the turkey baster, they're like, "Oh, I
Well, what
would
that makes
keep it a little higher so they see the turkey baster is there and see it in it, but out of their reach for snicking at it."
Yeah.
My seahorses do that too.
okay,
They
what,
do that,
wait,
or-
hang on. What she and he just said made me think of two things. First of all, flow. Okay,
Thank you.
depending on the species that you're keeping, some erectus will eat it off the floor, eat it off the rock, eat it off my finger. I mean, they'll come up and stick it off my finger. My Barbori and my Reedeye were like, hell no, you're a human, get back. And if it was on the floor, they were like, hell no, that's on the floor, not moving. So one tip might be to adjust your flow. I don't know how you're feeding currently, but if you're target feeding, like letting it drop right in front of them, try doing one piece at a time, because that's what my Barbori required. And Chris will say, you need to do tough love, but I love my Barbori. So I gave them one piece at a time. It was a pain in the butt. They finally got used to it, and I didn't have to, but I had to literally use a baster, not putting the baster in the tank, but barely in the tank, and dropping one piece of food right in front of their face, and they did it. Chris says that's wrong. I'm not saying he's wrong.
No,
but
like it's fine as long as you're consistent, as long as you're not keep changing the way that you're doing.
Mhm.
Don't keep changing.
Otherwise, you'll be training them onto something, and then training them onto something else, and then training them onto something else, and they'll just
right.
sort of.
And the other thing I was going to say is Colby's comment. I've never seen a pair of seahorses look as skinny and weak as the ones I rescued. Okay, so we talked about this in previous videos. You're amazing, Colby, because we all want to rescue these guys. But when you do rescue seahorses from a store and they're bringing in weak wild-caught seahorses, they'll just buy more. So while you're doing the right thing and trying to save them, it's so hard, but usually you can't. And the only other thing I would say is you've got to come to Seahorses group or jump in Wine Wednesday and actually jump in so we can talk. I know you're in the comments, but if you want to come in the video next week or whenever, where we welcome you, where we can talk back and forth and ask questions, and you can answer questions and whatever. Because the thing is, if you get wild-caught seahorses, you have to go through deworming. If they're that weak and that thin, it makes me think they have worms or an internal parasite. So anybody want to say I'm wrong or comments?
One thing I would try with them that I found with wild caughts is using a power head to keep the food in motion.
Yeah.
Can entice them to snick. And that has been my preferred method for training wild-caught seahorses to take food, because they don't realize that it's not live. And if they're already hungry, they're probably not going to notice any difference. They're really starving.
Well, and what's interesting is he said, I know, Holly, you just mentioned this, but I was reading it. Sorry, guys, if I missed your comments. I'm trying to keep up. But that they come up to the baster, see the food in the
They're
baster
snicking
moving
the
around,
turkey baster.
and then when it comes out, they want nothing to do with it. So number one, what food are you using? Because people will argue with me forever, but I'm telling you, if you don't have good food, they can. again, people will argue with me, but I'm telling you, they can smell it. They can smell if the food is bad, if it's not good food. They can tell. It's my opinion. But make sure you have not brown, very, very not defrozen, or I don't know the word, refrozen multiple times.
Defrosted
Make sure
and
the mysis is white, PE or Hikari. I like. Ray has made the point that Omega-1, any brand is fine. Just make sure it's not brown. And then another tip is you could add B12 or garlic and soak it first. We can go into detail later. But the other thing is, that's so weird. I feel like it is the movement. Because if you think about it, it's in a baster, it's moving around. And they think it's moving, you let it out, and then they know it's dead.
Yeah, but the thing is with the baster, then it just hits the bottom of the tank. If you
but he's letting it out right in front of their face.
But it's
But
in the
it's
water
our-
column afterwards. After it comes out of the baster, it is in the water
Right.
column. So why are they going for it in the baster, but not when it comes out?
because
Last
they're
question.
curious
Wait.
in the baster, and when it comes out, they're going, "That's not what I want."
Wait. Last question for Colby. Colby, have you ever seen them ever snick a piece of myces or mycids, however you want to call it, and not be able to eat it? Because we've already just, if they're wild caught, they may have worms. And then I'm
Parasites.
thinking weak snick.
He's using PE basis, he says.
Might be too big. Try Hikari.
Try
He's
Hikari.
tried bigger and smaller, he says, and also adding Celcon to their food.
Okay.
Yeah.
Watch out for the Celcon because it basically goes rancid very rapidly. If you want to use an enrichment, I would suggest getting the a probiotic or something comparable. I do not use the Celcon products.
Well, and Cheryl's making a good point. The reason we don't usually use those products is because they tend to come off the food and make the tank more organics in the tank. So as we try to help you, it would be great to find out tank size, filtration. If you've already said it, I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep up with the comments and do a live stream. But tell us what your setup is, because maybe you just need to improve the water quality. But I'm guessing that it's because they're well caught and they probably need to be dewormed and possibly treated for. Chris, you're shaking your head. Am I wrong?
There's a 9-week deworming protocol that needs to be done on all wild caughts, from my perspective. Chris, you probably have a different format on that than I do.
Well, and for both of you, if you can't make them,
one of the seahorses picked at it but spit it out right after. That's
It could
probably
be
a
So-
parasite.
It could be
So
too
that's-
large of food. It could be any number of things. I'm thinking they may have a snicking problem. They may have something. They may have ciliates in the oral cavity.
right. And I want to hear from Chris real quick because he deals with this on a different level, much larger. But I would say, well, Chris, the question is, if you were dealing with this and you didn't have 5 million seahorses, you only had 2, would you then go into deworming? Would you go into freshwater dip and parasite treatment? What would you do if you thought maybe they weren't eating because of a problem, not just that they were stubborn? And I'm looking for you, Colby, on Facebook. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like I haven't been in a situation where I've had to sort of focus so intensely on just the sort of 2 seahorses or whatever. But I guess if it's not broken, don't fix it, sort of thing. So I guess my technique works for me, so I don't really have to sort of branch out and do other stuff. Usually the first thing that I try and do is just like whenever I'm getting wild caught seahorses, usually mine come from a collector, so I know where they've come from. I know that they've come from the wild, so I know what I'm sort of in for right from the very beginning. I'm not sort of questioning whether they're captive bred or wild caught or whatever. So I check them externally for parasites, for aptasia, for any other sort of nasty pests that might come in. I usually start them off with a freshwater dip or a freshwater bath for a few minutes, make sure that there's nothing on them untoward that shouldn't be, and then from there I transfer them through, usually straight into a display tank that's already pre-set up and ready for them, because we put our wild seahorses on display to showcase what different species there are. And for me, it doesn't really matter whether they're out on display, even though they've only just come in, or in a quarantine tank out the back. If I treat their display as a quarantine tank that just so happens to be on display for our visitors, it doesn't really make any real difference for the seahorses. Now, we don't traditionally treat for internal worms and parasites from the get-go until we suspect that may be an issue. So we don't sort of prophylactically treat for that. But if we notice wasting and the seahorses are sort of deteriorating, even though I know that they're eating a lot, and or if they were showing strange feces or something like that, then I might sort of go through that sort of down that avenue. But there hasn't really been a great need to so far. Touch wood.
Well, I think you made a good point though. So we recommend if you get wild caught seahorses, the first step is deworming. The second step is this, that, and the other. But if they're not eating, period, then should you not treat first for parasites or ciliates in the gills or whatnot? Freshwater dip.
Yeah. So I'm
thinking a freshwater dip to start with would tell you if they have that sort of problem. It's like a way to diagnose.
If it's that delicate and in that terrible of a condition, a freshwater dip would probably kill them.
Oh no!
Dan says a freshwater dip has never killed a seahorse. So
yeah, I've freshwater dipped, and I
have too.
I haven't had any suffer from it other than that at the time being they were suffering, for the few minutes that parasites were coming out, ciliates or whatever. But
bottom line,
they were fine afterwards, but they were healthy going in. So I don't know about a seahorse that week,
Colby, really quickly, don't turn the lights on. Don't bother them right now. I see you don't have Facebook. If you can make an account really quickly, I just messaged someone. Apparently, it wasn't you. So
one of the things to keep in mind with the seahorses: 1, they're stressed. 2, they're starving. 3, their home is gone. Everything is gone. Everything they ever grew up in is gone. So they're going to be very fearful and very reluctant. And one of the things I always tell people, if you've got a pair of wild caughts, keep the lights down low, cover the tank on at least 3 sides so they don't get a lot of motion, a lot of things that could frighten them because they've never seen this before. And do your best to get them dewormed, to get them debugged. And I mean, I've done it in the past, and I'll tell you up front, I tell people flat out, do not buy wild caughts. All it does is encourage the stores to keep bringing them back in. And in my opinion, there's not the need, at least not in the U.S., and I don't think there's a need in Australia, for even or an excuse for bringing in wild caughts. And I do know stores in our area that have sold more than one seahorse that I have seen as captive bred, and it was obvious by the size and age of the seahorse. It was not captive bred. You don't sell a 9 to 10 inch erectus male for $35.
Agreed. Sorry.
And I've also, I was actually contacted by a friend of mine who owns a store, does a lot of corals and stuff, and he'd bought some erectus. He sold them to someone else, and they were refusing to eat. And he wanted to buy my captive breds to get them to eat. Well, most likely it would have killed my captive breds, and I explained that to him. And he messaged me back finally, I will never get wild caughts again.
Mhm.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, avoid that. Okay, I am seeing the comments. I'm trying to keep up. I see
Sorry.
Mohammed. No, you're fine. Excuse me. I see your question about how to deworm a seahorse. I actually have that written up, but I can't get to it while I'm on this computer. I will link it. I say this and then I never do it, but I have been doing it the past few weeks. I will link the document to show you the deworming process, which is not mine. It's from Dan and others. I think what was the woman's name who did it, Cheryl? Who did
Which one?
who wrote up the deworming
Deworming.
process?
The what process? Oh, the
The
word.
Deworming.
I just can't remember the name of
Deworming.
the woman who wrote it up.
Okay, what?
Anyways,
Wait,
it
run it by me again.
okay. I said I'm going to share a document that details the deworming process for seahorses, wild-caught seahorses. I know I got it from Dan, but I can't remember who originally wrote it. And that's the reason I haven't posted it yet, is I want to credit the original author. Do you remember who wrote it?
That and a number of other things that I utilize
Seahorse.org, right.
and utilizes were basically group efforts on seahorse.org.
I know, but this particular one was somebody. I feel like her
It
name
would
was
have probably
Sandy.
been Tammy Weiss.
No, it was, well, anyways, I will link it when we're done for sure. And
Well, Karen Smith in Paducah, Kentucky, was the one that actually wrote out all the pieces, and basically we did this joint effort of working with each other to come up with suggestions, information, etc.
So it was
Karen's
group
on the
contribution, and then she
together.
consolidated it and wrote it up. Sounds like.
Exactly. She is no longer involved in Seahorses at this point. We were friends. We've been friends for years. But she was one that actually did the writing on it.
right, okay, you're probably right. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find Colby's message. I see you messaged me. I will find it, sir.
So would the directions then be on seahorse.org on that website? If he goes to seahorse.org, will he find the directions there?
No, it does. I'll post it. I promise. I will post it. I have it written up. I will post it. I just want to credit whoever's responsible. That was my only point.
Yeah. The thing is, most of that stuff, unless you're admin or a moderator, you can't
Right.
see it. I can see so much more on seahorse.org
Right.
than any,
Yeah.
and I'm always very careful because of that.
I
Okay,
have
not to-
gotten a lot of information on that over the years. Though.
Oh yeah,
that was
Seahorse.org.
years ago
Well-
where I started.
Yeah, I mean, people that were contributing had been, I mean, Dan contributed, Beth Garrity-Siebel contributed. I believe, and there were well, I know there were
So
a
many
number.
people. I know.
Yeah.
And I would say also, Mohammed, I just read another question. And how do you deworm dwarf seahorses? Cheryl, I don't think you do. You
Do
don't
what?
deworm. You don't deworm dwarf seahorses, right?
You
I
don't
never
need-
have heard of it.
Yeah,
I
don't
haven't
think you.
either. I don't think so.
Dwarf seahorses are treated like fry. I'll post the link to a video we made about dwarf seahorses. And
Right.
I don't think they can handle the same things. They need live foods. They're so different from normal species, but
It depends on how the system is set up.
sure.
Basically, the rule of thumb is they're going to eat baby brine shrimp, which is not a particularly nutritious food. They'd be much better off if they were being fed copepods. However, the friend that I mentioned earlier in this discussion that set up the 40-gallon breeder proved that not only can it be done in a much larger tank, but
Sure.
the nutritional level and the reproductive level is dramatically enhanced.
Absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
No, this is why I kind of have a little pet peeve about, well, you can only keep dwarf seahorses in a 5-gallon
Yeah.
tank. No.
Right.
The
It
thing
depends on
is,
what you're
I'll
doing. Well,
say
but no, wait. A lot of people.
disadvantages are if you're doing a 20-gallon tank, that it's harder to keep the food density high enough
Right.
for them to get enough food. You're doing a lot of food in
Yeah.
that size of tank,
Right.
and they're so
And
small. Those
wasting.
horses.
But not if you're culturing copepods and
Mhm.
amphipods.
Even then,
Well,
even
you'd
then, you're
have
going
to
to
have, like
waste.
Cheryl says, you'd have to have a lot of them, and you'd have to have a lot of seahorses in the tank, I think, to make it worth it.
Yeah.
Right. Because
You're not
Lucy always, Lucy,
I'm just, all
gallon.
I'm
woo!
saying,
Wait. Let me make my comment and then you can go. And then I want to talk to Ray and then Chris, guys, real quick. But I was going to say, Lucy, in the video that we made about dwarf seahorses, she talks about they're not like erectus. They might be like a wild caught pair or something where they don't chase the food. It has to come by them. So if you have a big old tank, I'm not disagreeing with you, Cheryl. I know you proved it was right.
yeah.
But for a newbie, someone new to keeping dwarf seahorses, I absolutely recommend a 5 to 10 gallon. Yes, add a sump.
Yeah.
You add extra filtration. But the smaller space allows you to, as Holly said, keep the food in one area. Because in the video, which I'll link, Lucy talks about she uses a light so that the dwarf seahorses know the food's going to be right there. She puts the food right there because otherwise you're filling a tank with this food. It's adding to organics. It's never ending.
Yeah.
Cheryl is an expert. Never forget Cheryl's an expert. She can do things we can't. Go ahead, Cheryl.
No, I use the same principle of lighting when I have a male that is delivered in a tank. I shut the power off, light one corner, and wait for all the fry to swim to the light.
Yep.
Mhm.
I mean, makes life much easier.
Right, but telling people, oh yeah, you can keep dwarfs in a 40-gallon tank. I wouldn't do it.
I'm not saying, oh, you can. I'm saying
you can, but you shouldn't.
Do it right. It's harder.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. It would be harder if you're starting out to have a huge tank of dwarves. If you're starting out, I would do like a 5-gallon, or even I hear people do 2.5
10.
gallon if they have little amount, like maybe a couple pairs. You really fit quite a few from what I've read in a 5-gallon. So I think
Well, sure.
you're fine with that.
Right.
But
No,
20
I don't disagree.
gallons is hard to keep up the food density unless you have a ton of them in there.
No, I agree with you, Holly, completely. And all I was going to say is if you have a couple pair, you're not, the recommendation is to get 6 dwarf seahorses, not to keep a pair or, whatever, or 5 million pair, keep 3 pair.
Yeah.
And in a 5 to 10 gallon tank, the only reason I say I wouldn't do 2.5 is because of filtration. If you're willing to keep 2.5 gallon tanks and switch them out every few days, that's a different story. But if you want a tank that's on display, you need to do, in my opinion, 5 to 10 gallons. And I personally would add extra filtration or make sure you're ready to do the crazy water changes. They're like fry. I'll link the video. But Ray, real quick.
I don't keep dwarf seahorses.
Right. I don't either. But, and guys, I do have to mention that I have to get to Chris. He's sat here patiently listening to us ramble all night. But I want to ask Ray something, and I do have to pick up my daughter from work in like 30 minutes. So, Ray, you were having a conversation in the comment section. Do you care to share? I don't want to go back and try to.
Which one?
But, oh, Lord. How many have you had?
I don't remember. I got cognitive impairment, remember?
That's not fair. I still need to know, sir. I'm just kidding, Ray. But no, I read something and I was like, go ahead.
Like if you're talking about the food for Colby.
Yes.
Just a couple of things that I just had mentioned on that. It wasn't a lot, but also for Muhammad, when it comes to dwarfs, I personally don't see it makes any sense using a 20 gallon, even if you have it already to start with. First of all, a 5-gallon tank is plenty big enough. And when I was keeping 50 at a time, and it would fluctuate the numbers in there, but around that 50 mark, I could probably only sit and look at the tank and count about 20 at a time. The only way I knew there was 50 is
Yep.
when I took everything out and started counting them all. So if you've only got the 3 pairs that you're talking about, seeing all 3 pairs in a 5-gallon tank is going to be challenging. A lot of people think that they're just a bit smaller version of a regular Seahorse, but in fact, you can put 3 or 4 of them on a silver dollar.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're adults.
Most people don't realize how small they really are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Colby, I'm going to put my personal, because I didn't get your message, so I'm going to put my personal in there. Please contact me. But totally agree, Ray. Why wouldn't anyone do dwarfs? I just don't get it. I know they're, I mean, they
have no
seem
problem
cute,
with
but
someone just
Why
wanting
would
to do it
anybody
for the
try to
talent.
raise babies?
well, that's true
They're
too. You're
cute.
right, Cheryl.
They're cute. I tried dwarves once, and like I've mentioned before, they only lasted a few weeks. Like hydroids came in with them. I got them mail order. Back in the day, that was how they were sold, like in the back of a magazine or a comic book or something. Or, I ordered them from Florida, and they came with their friends, which brought hydroids. Their friends were like what was it? A horseshoe crab, a little horseshoe crab, and
Mm.
callirpa, and different things to go with them. But I knew nothing about them, and I set up my little dwarf seahorse tank, and then I'm researching online, and I'm like, oh, I've got hydroids. I figured out what they were. The seahorses were gone like in a week or so after that. I couldn't do anything about it. It was it was bad. And they had to have live food, fresh hatched every day, and yeah, they were difficult.
My favorite was my first saltwater tank that I was setting up. I was told to use table salt and keep adding it until it
Oh,
tasted salty.
there's some great advice.
And that
Oh
did
man.
not end well. That did not end well. If you
Yeah,
think,
no, I
Probably because you
remember,
have the
yeah,
wrong
when I
salt.
first started in saltwater, you cycled the tank with a fish, and you had to wait for the fish to die so you could out of this.
Yep.
That was
Terrible.
what were
old
you going to say?
days. Oh,
What,
I used damsel fish. Remember blue
Yep.
damsel? You put a pair of blue damsels or something in the tank, and then that would start your cycle.
In my
Uh,
reef tank, I had the striped damsels, the black and white ones. Those assholes, excuse my language, I could not, they never died. I could never catch them. They beat the crap out of every other fish. They were horrid. I hated those things.
hey,
So glad we're past that.
I inherited a pair of clowns that were reaching sexual maturity. And I inherited them because I bought the tank and they were excess baggage. They got to the point every time I go to clean the tank, they were drawing blood on me. So I found a way to teach them that that was not a good idea. I would load up 12cc syringes with water, and every time they'd come near my hand, I'd squirt them. And they figured out, it took them about a week, that if they don't mess with the hand, they don't get squirted. They didn't like getting squirted.
it's like training a dog or cat.
Yeah.
Get your squirt bottle for the
Yep.
fish. That's funny.
Does it work on your husbands too?
Oh, please tell me it does.
You said
Please.
cat?
Hey, Chris. Chris, I wanted to give you a few seconds. I know you just joined to share your knowledge and be wonderful, but anything you wanted to talk about or share or etc.?
So Not too much has really sort of changed since last week.
You're still leaving us all.
I'm still leaving you all, yeah. I've resigned at Seahorse.
He's not going to
World.
leave us. He's not going to leave us.
My last day is in 15 days, or 11 and a half work days. So basically the 25th of March is my last day at Seahorse World, and then I'm sort of packing up and moving back to the mainland. Like I was saying last week, or whenever it was that I last saw you, Graham Short reached out, and he's doing a research paper on breviceps and tuberculosis at the moment, and he's trying to get samples and trying to sort of DNA sequence both species, or try and see if there is any genetic difference between both species. The genetics work hasn't been done on them, and they're both species are very data deficient here in Australia. So should be really, really good work.
So
he's actually coming down to Tasmania this weekend, and I will probably get to meet him next week. So very exciting times.
Wow.
But
tell him the crazy Wine Wednesday chick said hi. But go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely will, and he'll know exactly who I'm talking about. So
he will.
Hopefully this will all go well, and he will probably hopefully move on to some of our other data deficient species here in Australia, like Subelongatus, Angustus, so on and so forth. So it should be really, really good, and hope that he sort of gets on the right path with it all, and sort of continues on that sort of good work even after I'm gone. So it should be good.
So are you going to be involved in DNA testing and collection, or is that?
What's that? Sorry,
are you going to be involved with the actual collection and DNA testing? Or
Chris is leaving. He's hightailing it out.
So I do actually have a few samples for him. They're basically just seahorses that have passed away through sort of natural means over time or whatever, and they're currently frozen. I'll be we'll be giving those specimens to the CSRIO, and basically Graham will be using those samples to do some DNA work on these. And he's trying to get different samples from different states. So he's going along all the southern coastline of Australia. So Victoria and Tasmania. Hopefully he can find some samples down here, South Australia, and then across to Western Australia. So the variants, or the seahorses that you get here in Victoria, Tasmania, and South Australia are all considered Hippocampus breviceps, which are a tiny little dwarf seahorse. They're bigger than your Zostray. They are actually big enough that when they reach full adulthood, you're able to eat frozen mysids, but you can only sort of graduate them onto eating frozen right towards the very end when they're quite big. But it is quite promising that they sort of get to that sort of size. But the Western Australian ones, I actually consider them Hippocampus tuberculatus. Rudy Kuda basically scientifically described them erroneously quite some time ago, or just did it incorrectly, or I'm not quite sure what happened there. But he obviously spotted the difference in them straight away. And to anyone who's kept both species before, it's pretty distinct. It's pretty pronounced. The difference.
But it gets detailed. Like the spines come out from here, and the stripes are here.
If I showed you a side-by-side photo of the two, you would, in layman's terms, you would see the pronounced difference. If you took an X-ray of both seahorses, like laying on their side by side, you would see some morphological differences, which help us sort of differentiate the two. But they haven't
using DNA testing on these.
They haven't done the DNA work on them yet. So that's why in a lot of the literature, if you go through all of Rudy Kuda's books or Sarah Lowry's books or wherever, it's sort of used as a synonym. So tuberculitis is considered a synonym, and officially they're considered breviceps. So even some WA collectors sell them as tuberculitis, or some sell them as breviceps, which gets very, very confusing. But hopefully this work that Graham's doing will help differentiate and help settle the case once and for all. They're either breviceps or tuberculatus.
Which will be amazing. I do have one quick question just on a hobbyist level, Chris. Obviously, this is extremely important for the scientific community and conservation and all of that. But like, do they have different behaviors? Meaning like my erectus and my barbary act very differently. If I keep them, they're different. Is that the case, or is it just scientific?
So I would say that their differences are more morphological rather than
Gotcha.
Exactly.
sort of behavioural. So they look different. They're roughly around about the same sort of size. There might be a slight difference, maybe like, you know, millimeters or maybe a centimetre difference between the maximum size of one versus the other. But it's more the morphological differences. The reason why they're called tuberculatus is because of the bony tubercules, basically like bony humps that grow on their backs. The breviceps don't have that. And the breviceps are more prone to growing big, long, beautiful, ornate cirri. So they'll have the big, long headdresses, you know, the rock star hairstyle. They're sort of rocking all that. Whereas the tuberculatus, as far as I'm saying, I'm not saying they can't grow them. Just in the ones that I've seen, I haven't seen any cirri on the tuberculatus. But the tuberculatus have these big bony humps on their backs that grow in 2 rows down along their spine that the breviceps don't have and can't. Like I haven't seen any breviceps that have had them, whereas the WA variants, the tuberculatus, do have them. And I think that's why Rudy Kuda, when he found them over in WA, whenever he did, identified them as a different species to breviceps, because visually they're very different. But the scientific DNA work hasn't been done on them yet, so they haven't been properly DNA sequenced yet. And that's what Graham's hopefully going to do, and we will see how genetically similar they are or how far away they are.
Well, the only way Graham is the guy to do it. Again, I'll link the interview with Graham again. But he talks about, he is one of the significant people that discovered and identified Hippocampus japapigu. Am I saying it right? Japapigu. Anyways, the little teeny seahorse that he identified using the sequencing. I can't even say it. Sequencing and etc. that Chris just described. It's really amazing.
The thing is, it's like here in the U.S. You've got, quote, the northern and the southern erectus. The northerns look very different. They typically are much smaller. They have a broader torso. They look very different. At one point, they were classified as Hippocampus hubsiconius due to their primary habitat being in Hudson Bay, versus the southern erectus, which were labeled Hippocampus erectus. But DNA testing indicated that they're both the same species. However, we've got the Kuda complex to deal with. How many species are there actually that are individual species, and genetically different, that are all labeled as Kuda?
And what if you have species that are not genetically different, but they look different and they act different because of the adaptations they've made based on where they live?
Well,
it's all crazy.
You know, this is where, from a zoological perspective, you have to find a way to be able to classify them. Using DNA is the closest we can to determine how closely related different species are. And the problem with that, though, is it's an ever-changing mechanism. Speciation is ongoing and will be ongoing indefinitely.
Well, and the other problem, I'm just curious. I'm not saying this, I'm asking it, but isn't the other problem, if I'm right, and a species that has the same DNA can look completely different because they've adapted to the area, if they start becoming extinct because of something going on over there, the species is still okay. So doesn't that mess up the whole... Never mind, I'm going to shut up. Okay. That's not a good
You have to
good
remember,
place to go.
first of all, when you're dealing with this kind of stuff, there's what we call the lumpers and the splitters.
Mm.
Lumpers like to put as many things, many different somewhat similar into the same classification versus the splitters that want to, you know, pick hairs. You also have to remember the whole time all of this is going on is all these species are continuing to find a selective advantage that helps them prosper more. And as such, if given sufficient time, they develop their own characteristics. And it does not always mean that they are on the genome. It may be a learned behavior.
Right over my head. I say go science, go science. But anyways, I'm just glad that Grandma's working with Seahorse Australia because he's amazing, as is Seahorse Australia. I'm bummed that you won't be there anymore, but you will be there for the at least initial part, right?
Yeah, so I'm hopefully going to meet him soon, and yeah, it'll be good to see where things go. But I'm sure even in my absence, you know, they'll be on the right course, and hopefully, yeah, more people do sort of more work on seahorses and whatnot. Because although Australia is a massive biodiversity hotspot for seahorses and other cygnethids like sea dragons and pipefish and pipe horses and the rest of it, unfortunately in Australia, most of our species are very data deficient. So that means that, you know, we don't know very much about them. They haven't been well studied. We don't have many samples in labs or in museums or whatever for the species. Might be because they come from a really, really sort of niche area that's very, very deep, or, you know, they're just very hard to find, or just they're not found in areas that humans often sort of inhabit or come across. So it would be good if more ichthyologists and more sort of scientists got together and sort of studied a lot of our species under the microscope a lot more. But yeah, hopefully that'll sort of all happen, and hopefully it'll sort of increase our knowledge on all these species as well.
Absolutely.
You're making me feeling better, Chris, because I have the habit anytime I see a seahorse in Australia and somebody wants to know what species it is, I contact one of my friends in Oz because I'm not even going to try.
Right.
Because some of them are so similar, and you're like, what's the difference between this one and this one?
Well, and just the knowledge will grow as we learn more about the species and how many, you know, and where we don't see them. And I'm just glad it's happening. It'll be amazing. Guys, I am going to have to go get my daughter. But Ray, I feel like we've left you out. Anything you want to say about anything?
Nope, no problem.
Okay. All right. Chris, anything else? We love when you come. I feel like
yeah, like I'll keep coming to the Seahorse Whisperer chats when I'm able to, or when life allows. Might be a little while before I'm on again, and next time I'm on it might be quite different. But yeah, love chatting up with all you guys, and you know, catching up. It's good.
We love you no matter what, and we love you coming and sharing your information. Even if you leave the field, you've still got knowledge.
You're still an expert.
Yes.
Opening up a business. He's going to be opening up a business called Shrimpy Business.
Well, let's not get ahead of him. He'll do it, and he'll let us know.
He loves shrimp.
Just to let you guys know, the little red shrimp and snails at the bottom are all Chris. He insisted that Wine Wednesday have their shrimp and the snails. But Holly, did you have anything else to share? I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean to cut you guys short, but I do have to go pick up my daughter. So,
not that I can think of.
Okay, well, Holly, I've got your address. I showed you. I've got the stuff ready to go. So I'll send you a tracking tomorrow. And where's my glass? I'm going to say Happy Wine Wednesday, guys. I'll see you next week, okay?
Good night.
Good night.
Happy Wine Wednesday.